So today we're going to try to tell the story behind price wars on Amazon. Whether if you have noticed or not, if you're selling on Amazon, you're probably involved in hundreds and maybe thousands price wars a day. So it's a big deal on Amazon, and it's getting more and more of a big deal as Amazon continues to be more dynamic, more competitive, and with that, the challenge increases. On the agenda, we're going to talk about what are price wars and why are they so critical. Why do they occur? What do they look like? How can we optimally manage our price wars? And how can technology assist here? At the end, a little peek to the future. So let's look at Wikipedia's definition for a price war. A price war is a commercial competition characterized by the repeated cutting of prices below those of competitors. That's a description for any price war on any selling channel. I would add, if we're talking about Amazon, of course, for winning the buy box, right? That's the main target for sellers who sell competitive products, obtain the buy box and obtain it for as much as possible. So why should sellers care so much about the buy box? I'm assuming that you already know that. In past research and studies, we saw that above 80% of sales generated on Amazon were coming through the buy box. When you take the prices or the statistics of Amazon's mobile app, these numbers even increase. So we're talking about even higher number than 80%, obviously something that we should chase for when we can. So maximizing your buy box share on Amazon is not that trivial, right? And you kind of, when you're talking about price wars, you kind of have a dilemma. From one side, you can cut the prices of your competitors, but who knows, maybe they will follow you, and eventually you're engaged in a price war that will lead the prices down. On the other hand, you may stay at the high price, but your competitor may cut you. Now, you don't really know what is the right path before you go through that path. And that is indeed a dilemma that you would need to do before engaging any price war out there. It kind of reminds us of maybe a more famous dilemma, the prisoner's dilemma. We're talking about two prisoners that are interrogated. They have the choice either to accuse their friend or to stay silent. And each direction they take has its consequences. So this more or less explains the different paths that they can go at. We have prisoner A, prisoner B. If they're both silent and not accusing each other, they get 1 year each in prison. If they both accuse each other, that's in the one below, they both get 3 years of prison. And if one accuses and the other one stays silent, the one that stays silent gets the prize of 5 years in prison, the other one goes free. And of course, they're not in contact one with another. They just need to guess, try to guess what the other one will do, and according to that, play. So it kind of reminds our dilemma. We have two sellers, for that matter, seller A, seller B, and the decision can be whether to cut the prices down or to stay at the high price. And here again, we have the different options. If both sellers stay at the high price, they make a nice profit. In this example, the $3K each. If they do decide both to cut prices down, they will make eventually smaller profits, 1K each in this example. If one decides to cut prices and the other one stays at the high price will lose everything, more or less, and the one that reduced the prices will get the prize, the full prize. Yeah, so before we talk about this example, maybe a slight difference between the prisoner's dilemma and the seller's dilemma. A prisoner has one chance to take the decision, and by that chance, the path is defined where the seller has to make the decision each day, each product, each point in time before engaging these price wars. So there are much more decision points, actually not the amount that a person can handle. On the other hand, the good news is that the seller has much more data points that they can use in order to make the right decision, of course, given that they accumulate these data points and given that they have the right tools, the right algorithms that can utilize these data points. So what we can see here is an example for a price war. In this graph, on the x-axis, we have the time, and on the y-axis, we have the price of the product over time. And we see two competitors competing for the buy box, obviously, where one is colored in red and the other one colored in gray. And we can see that each one, in its own turn, reduces the prices, where the other one reacts subsequently. Okay? In this case, we're talking about a quite short price war. It lasted for 17 minutes. And the amount of price reduced as a result of this price war is quite low also. We're talking about 0.02%. So in this case, it wasn't that substantial. In this case, another example of a price war, we can see that it lasted much more, for much more time, 24 hours, and the reduction of price was by 30%, of course, much, much more substantial than the case we saw before. Now, interestingly, we can see that the two competitors here take one tactic until a specific point. The tactic is reducing prices by small amounts. And then maybe one and the other one follows, decides to reduce the prices by much larger amounts. So another example to show that things are never consistent, okay? Even when you're talking about the same sellers, the pattern and behavior changes over time, and this is not a lot of time, it's 24 hours. A third example, this time we have three sellers competing in this price war. We can see that two act more or less the same. They reduce the prices by a little, but more frequently. There's another one who is clearly involved in this price war, but the frequency is lower. On the other hand, the price reductions are higher, okay? So another example to show that there are different shapes and forms for price wars, and obviously, if you want to make the optimal decision, you need to adapt to the specific shape and form of the given price war. So we showed several specific examples for price wars. Let's talk a little bit about high-level statistics that we saw in our research. So first of all, in terms of timing, duration of price wars, we saw that more than half of the price wars do not last more than 3 to 4 hours. We can see in the red part here that 30%, almost 30% of the price wars last between 1 and 2 hours. And in the blue section, subsequent section, we can see 26.4. Together, we have more than half of the price wars. So on one hand, price wars are indeed a big deal. They are market changer and definitely cause disruption to prices, the profit, and so on. On the other hand, it happens in a quite short time. It doesn't always last 24 hours like we saw before. Another interesting statistic that we saw in terms of number of competitors competing in the price war, the vast majority of price wars are between two competitors. You have almost 8% of price wars that are held between 3 competitors. Other than that, we're talking about very small proportions of price wars. Here's another interesting statistic. Here, more to show or to talk about the strength of the competitors that are participating in the price wars. So in this example, we can see the distribution of FBA versus FBM in the general listing population, okay? FBA in the general population of listings is more or less 25%, again, according to the database that we have analyzed, and FBM takes part of 75% in the general population. But when you're talking about price wars, FBA jumps to 52% of the listings that are involved in price wars. So we can say that the price wars are usually performed by sellers or listings that are stronger, that have the ability to engage in these price wars. Here's another example. Here, this time we're talking about shipping time, and we can see that listings that ship up to 1 day, the products up to 1 day, they take part of 20% of the general population of listings. Above 1 day, we're talking about 80% of the listings. But when you look at the listings involved in price wars, the listings that ship up to 1 day comprise 60% of all the listings that are involved in price wars. So again, and this is of course correlated to the previous slide that we saw. Obviously FBA is correlated to shipping time. But again, to show that the stronger listings have more chances, probably in price war, therefore engage more. Here we can see the distribution of price wars along the days of the week. You can see that there's no clear seasonality between the days. You typically have seasonality, in this case, weekly seasonality. Monday sells more than Saturday, usually. But when you're talking about the price wars, you can't see this seasonality. Now, this suggests a very interesting interpretation, and it kind of reflects the place that Amazon resides in today. Being so dynamic, so competitive, you can see that the dominant players playing this game are probably machines, right? Because machines don't differ between Saturday, Monday, Sunday. They do their job, make the price changes, as opposed to the statistics that we saw in orders and sales. So this is a situation which is becoming more and more like algo trading, in which machines are the dominant part of trading, of making the trading transactions. We can see that in Amazon, it's also going to that direction. In the same fashion, this is the distribution of price wars along the hours of the day. Again, no clear seasonality. Like in orders, you see that in the evening, in the morning, you have more orders, less, of course, in the middle of the night. Here, you don't see any clear seasonality. Okay, so we talked about why price wars are a big deal, but how can we manage them correctly? How can we optimally manage our price wars? So we divide this question into three main components: learning the arena, knowing your competitors, and being a market maker, meaning being proactive and not following. Even if you decide not to engage a price war or not to change the price, take that decision rather than follow the others. Okay, so learning the arena. First tip here is to understand what the level of effective competition is. There are products and arenas in which you have 10, 20, 30 competitors, but only 2 or 3 are actually effective competitors. Only they obtain the buy box, and therefore those are the ones that you want to compete against and not against the other. In this case, we can see that there are some competitors that are not changing prices, probably not getting any buy box. You can see that those straight lines in the graph. And there are 2 competitors, the red one and the gray one, that constantly change prices and actually, again, are involved in the price war, going up and down in the pricing. So identify your effective competition is very, very important, especially for not competing against competitors that are just not effective. You don't need to reduce prices against them. So what we can see here is a zoom in to the previous chart that we saw, only zooming in into these two competitors that are involved in price wars. These are the effective competitors, as we said. So in this slide, what we want to talk about is identifying the ballpark of your realistic buy box share, okay? In this case, it's hard to see, but I can tell you that the red competitor seller gains more or less 2 times more buy box than the gray one, probably because of characteristics, the shipping, the reviews, the rating. And the gray one needs to understand that it probably can't obtain more than 1/3 of buy box in this case against this competitor. If they would understand it, they would not engage in too many price wars or unnecessary price wars. If they would not get it, not understand it, they will obviously trigger a price war in which prices will be reduced. And eventually what happens is that if you get to the floor price, to your floor price, and your competitor cuts beneath your floor price, then that's it, game over. You're not making any more profit, not getting any more buy box. So you need to be very careful in engaging into unnecessary price wars. Okay, another important thing is to identify the repricing method of your competitors, okay? Here what we can see is that there's one competitor in gray that is not using probably any repricing, not repricing frequently at least, and we have 2 additional competitors, sellers that are using repricers, frequently changing prices. If we're competing against one of these, we obviously need to engage in these price wars, or at least consider engaging them, because otherwise we will not obtain any of the buy box. But if they were not here, and only the upper one was here, that's an important piece of information to know, right? Because all we need to know is what is the price that he's continuously standing on, and just reduce it by a bit, and that's it. We have 100% buy box, at least at that time, while it's only us and them. So very important to identify the repricing method of your competitors. Another tip, how low can they go? Try to identify the floor price of your competitors, okay? In this graph, we can clearly see here in the red one that this would be their floor price, right? They always reach this price, but they don't go beneath this price. And again, if you have this information and you know that your floor price is lower than this floor price, then all you need to do is just price beneath their floor price, and again, win most of the buy box. Okay, so try to identify the floor price of your competitors. What is your competitive edge? This is a very important concept, especially in Amazon. You know that price is not the only factor in Amazon for ranking for the buy box. You have additional factors like the ratings, like the shipping, like other things. And you need to know what is your positive or negative, by the way, competitive edge, okay? In this case, we can see the buy box winners along time. The red one, each red dot, notes that the red seller won the buy box at that specific time, same for the blue. And we can see that they obtain more or less the same buy box shares a long time. But the interesting part is that there's a substantial difference in price, $5 in price between them, and even so, they're winning more or less same buy box share. So once you have identified your competitive edge, you can price higher and, of course, enlarge your margins. This is a very, very important concept. We actually spent a lot of time in researching this and providing algorithms that analyze you versus each of your competitors in each of your products in order to better understand what the competitive edge between you and them for these products at this time. Okay, We talked about being a market maker, being proactive, and here what we can see is a notion that we call reverse price wars, okay? We can see the price wars going down, just like before, but here we have an interesting phenomena where prices go up, but in the same fashion, okay? One increases the price, the other one increases afterwards, the first one, and so on. So if you can do that, okay, if you can do this thing and increase the prices a long time, increase, decrease, increase, decrease, then obviously your margins, your profit will be much higher than just getting stuck at floor or at that bottom price which the price wars led to. Here we can see a very interesting fact about the reverse price wars. So we analyzed all the price wars identified in the system, and we saw that about a third of price wars are actually reverse price wars, meaning that you have a great chance to reverse the price direction upwards after involvement in a price war. So definitely something that you should do, probably not in peak hours, obviously, maybe more in off-peak hours, but something that is worth the chance because the probability for succeeding here is not bad at all. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about technology. Eventually, we're here to solve these business problems with the help of technology. We'll give you a little peek to our research center, in this case, the research of price wars. What you can see here in this chart is a representation for every product that was involved in a price war at a given time, okay? Each circle is a product. You can even see the ASINs in these two circles. The size of these circles note the size of GMV of these products, how much they sell. The larger, the more they sell, at least at this time. And the color notes the level of price wars, how much, I think, during the day, these price wars happened. For example, if we have a very red product here, price war probably lasted for several hours. Most of the day, or a large proportion of the day, had price wars for these products. So, as Gilad mentioned before, this research was done based on about 10 billion products that we have in the system today. And from these 10 billion products, we can see at each given time who are involved in price war. This is obviously very important for our research in order to put an algorithm or a solution that will resolve these price wars optimally. So, before providing the solution, you need to make sure that you identify the price wars themselves, right? So, in this example, and it's quite simple example, we have two sellers, and at T1, point T1 in time, one of them reduces prices, then the second one, then the first one again, and then the second one. Very, very clear, very, very simple sequence of price reductions. But reality is usually different. It's not that simple. It's not that clear. Let's look at another example. Next slide. Another example, it's also quite systematic, but a little less than the first one we saw. We can see that, again, we have two sellers that are involved in a price wars and reducing prices. The difference here is that seller A reduces prices quite fast. He reacts fast. And seller B, it takes him 2 iterations to reduce. So seller A reduced here, B reduced here. A immediately reduced here, B reduced here. And again, it's not as simple as the previous example, but quite consistent and quite identifiable. Okay, an algorithm can identify this easily. But guess what? The real-life examples for price wars that we had, and we showed one that is not quite consistent, are not like this at all, okay? You have multiple players, more than 2 sometimes, You have different methods, different tactics. They change all kinds of attributes. So identifying the price war is a big deal by itself. We spend pretty much time on placing an algorithm that identifies before the solution itself. So we talked about the different areas in which you can excel and optimize your involvement in price wars, learning the arena, knowing your competitors, being a market maker, but, this is the next slide, things always change. It's not enough to identify once the floor price of your competitor or to once identify the repricing method of your competitor. You need to always learn, always adjust, because things can change all the time. Competitors' characteristics can change. For example, their ratings, of course, can change over time. They can change their floor prices or their tactics and repricing methodology. Even Amazon's buy box algorithm can change for the same product. So you all the time need to learn and to adjust. And this is our approach, Feedvisor's approach, to these types of problems. We believe that machine learning models can help greatly here because of the need to always learn, always adjust. And what we do is have a model for each angle in which you can learn. For example, we talked about identifying the floor prices. So one of these models can be in charge of identifying floor prices. Another one being in charge of identifying the repricing methods. If it's a repricer, not repricer, intelligent one, less intelligent, and so on. Another model looks at price wars as a whole and tries to see what the outcome was at the end of the price war between myself and each and every competitor independently. Okay? So you have these bunch of models where they provide their input. Maybe later on you have additional models and additional models that take that input, and eventually using all that input, you result with a final decision, and this is made every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depending on the arena and on the frequency of price changes and so on. It's not something that happens once a week or something like that. So I promised you that we're going to give you a peek to the future. This is an interesting chart. We try to see what is the directions of price wars in general and price changes specifically in the buy box. Obviously, price changes in the buy box are very much correlated to the price wars. So what you can see here is the amount of price changes per day over time. What is the amount of price changes? Let's say that we sample the buy box 100 times today, okay? And 10 out of 100 times, we saw that the price changed compared to the previous sampling. So that would be 10% change of the buy box prices. And we can see that this was tracked several months ago, so this is a year and several months ago. We can see that at the beginning, we were more at the area of 6–7% of price changes in the buy box, but after a year, we're already almost reaching the 10%. And this obviously looks like a trend that is continuing and growing and kind of reinforces what we said before in the beginning, that price wars are not going to go anywhere. You have to know how to deal with them, how to cope with them. In our eyes, this is a major part of growing your business and leading it to success.